Hey guys, Sko here. Welcome back to X-Men Explained. Today we're talking about Storm. So Storm is super cool, super powerful, very well-rounded character, and she is super fun to play, especially multiplayer, I would say, because of the way that her weather supports affect an entire table. So I want to talk about her supports and kind of her main gimmick. I'm going to talk about a few little rules, tidbits about her cards. Hopefully we're going to be able to keep this one pretty short. So Aurora begins the game with a weather deck, and the insert describes how that happens. So we're going to begin the game with her weather deck in play. They all are going to be shuffled together and placed face down next to your identity. And then her setup ability is going to have you choose a support from the weather decks and put it into play, which is of your choice. So the deck never really needs to be random. You're always going to be choosing the support of your choice. So I'm going to talk about what these supports actually are and what they do. I'll just touch on each of them in this order. So Clear Skies has permanent, as they all do, but a recent update to the permanent rule, I believe in these updates, say that cards with the permanent keyword can be removed from play by cards within the same card set. So because this is from a Storm's set, Storm's abilities are able to remove them from play. I think they worded them as being part of the weather deck set, but I think we're going to, we have to treat them as part of Storm somehow for that to work. So permanent means they cannot be removed from play, they cannot be blanked, except by Storm's abilities. So basically you're going to have that happen from her hero side ability, and Weather Goddess are the ways to take these weather supports out of play. Clear Sky says each character gains Stalwart. Stalwart means the character cannot be stunned or confused. When this enters play, if any character has a stunned or confused status card, or any number of those, they will fall off, and they will all get discarded. And its special ability is draw one card. Remember, cards with a special triggered ability, they are never triggered unless something else tells you to trigger them. So it does not have its own trigger condition, and it is only caused by other things. And we're going to talk more about how that happens. Secondly, Hurricane, also permanent. Each character gains Retaliate 1. Retaliate 1 is a numbered keyword, and it stacks. So a character that already has Retaliate 1 will have Retaliate 2, so on and so forth. And its special is Remove 2 threat from a scheme. Thunderstorm is permanent. Each character gains +1 attack. Special, deal 2 damage to an enemy. And Blizzard, permanent, each character gets -1 attack. Special, choose a non-elite minion, cost arrow. Until the end of the round, treat that minion's text box as if it were blank, except for traits. One thing to note about Blizzard is this ability is still possible to resolve when a character's, or when a minion's text box is already blank. So even in the case of a drone, or an ally turned minion who's blanked by something else, or even if another ability has blanked the text box in that same round, you can still trigger this ability. It is still considered resolved, even if the card's text box is already blank. So as you can see, these supports have basically two parts. They have a passive ability, which affects the whole table, usually every player, as well as the villain side. So they can obviously have some kind of positive and negative effects. And so a lot of the finesse of playing Storm, especially in a multiplayer setting, is managing which passives are available to the table at what time. So to talk about that, we want to talk about how we switch these supports in and out of play. And that is chiefly by our weather control action. So on Storm's hero side, it says action, swap your weather support in play with a weather support of your choice from the weather deck. So that involves taking the one that is revealed, taking it out of play, and then taking another one of the three back into play. You must do that in order to do the second sentence of this ability. So you must swap. You cannot keep the same support in play and just continue resolving this ability. In that case, you have not swapped. So you need to take one out of play and take one of the other three and put it into play, which sometimes will have an immediate effect. Mostly Clear Skies is the one that will immediately cause status cards to get discarded. Then the second sentence, resolve the special ability on your weather support in play. And this whole ability is limited to happen once per round. So generally speaking, you get one switch of your abilities during your turn, during a round. It's important to note that that does not need to be on your turn. This is an action. Triggered abilities that are labeled as an action can happen during the player phase, but on anyone's turn, any player can call for an action, which can allow the Storm player to take this action. Of course, it is not available to you if you are an alter ego. So the whole table should plan around turns when Storm is going into alter ego means that she cannot change the weather support until her turn comes around. So where in player order Storm is going to should heavily impact what weather she leaves up when she goes to alter ego, because that weather is going to stay in play a little less flexibly than usual. So ideally keep it one that is not going to necessarily harm the other players too much. Weather Goddess is an event which has nearly or maybe exactly the same text. Swap your weather support in play with a support of your choice from the weather deck. Again, you must swap. You cannot just choose the same one to repeat. And then you resolve the special ability on your weather support in play. In the case of both of these things, it's also an action. You can also play it on other people's turns. So this is really a key card to talk about existing in your hand when your multiplayer table is planning. So some of these supports are much better to have during the player phase, and some are better during the villain phase. Like Blizzard is a clear example of one that you want during the villain phase, but not during the player phase. Having Weather Goddess, you can tell the table that, hey, at the end of the player phase, after everyone has done all their stuff, I'm going to put on Blizzard so that we can be, a little more safe from this last attack. But outside of Weather Goddess, you're only getting one switch per turn. Both of these abilities cause you to resolve the special ability on your weather support. That ability is considered to be performed by Storm. We have gotten that in a recent ruling. So even though it is on a support, which is normally not a extension of your identity, that action, like the deal 2 damage or the remove 2 threat, is considered performed by Storm. I don't have explicit clarity on why that is yet, but I think that it is true that if one of our abilities, something that is an extension of your ID, which is your ID itself or an event card, tells you to resolve in another ability, that particular instance of that other ability is also considered to be an extension of your ID for only that use. In any case, if it ever matters, that those actions are performed by Storm. And then I'm going to move on and talk about some of our events, especially some that are kind of the most interesting. So her big attack event and her big thwart event both work very similarly. Lightning Bolt is a hero action attack, deal 8 damage to an enemy. If Thunderstorm resolve its special ability. So we know from a very similar situation with Miles Spider-Man that when an ability that is an attack tells you to resolve another ability, that other ability does not become an attack if it is not already. So this special on Thunderstorm does not have the attack label, so it is not considered an attack. So that matters a handful of ways. You could play Lightning Bolt, you could attack an enemy, and then the special can target the villain even if there's a guard minion in play, because it is not an attack. If you Lightning Bolt one enemy and then you Thunderstorm an enemy with Retaliate, you will not receive Retaliate because Thunderstorm is not an attack. And, a couple other times that could matter. But just even though it's is kind of nestled inside of this attack, it does not inherit the attack label. So it does not, it's not affected by guard, and it does not cause Retaliate on its own. Lightning Bolt does cause Retaliate. So if you attack one enemy with Lightning Bolt and you defeat a different enemy with Thunderstorm, you cannot trigger a card like Chase Them Down that says after your hero attacks and defeats an enemy, because it has to be the same enemy. I believe that it is an open question. We have a pending question running on if you attack one enemy and then you defeat it with Thunderstorm, if it is then true to trigger Chase Them Down after your hero attacks and defeats an enemy, blah, 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 remove 2 threat. My read is considering that legal because I like when there's multiple trigger conditions kind of lumped together. I just say if that's true at the time that the trigger condition triggers, then you're good. But we have that question pending, and I will update the comments when we hear about it. Torrential Rain seems to work similarly. It says remove 3 threat from among schemes in play. If Hurricane is in play, resolve its special ability. So we don't know for sure, but if we apply the same principle of the Miles ruling, I believe that it follows that this special is not considered a thwart. So that has some positives and negatives. It could get around patrol if a patrol enemy is in play, even though it's caused by a thwart, but it doesn't count as a thwart itself. So if something that triggers after thwarting a scheme is not going to trigger off of the 2 threat alone. If you thwart one scheme or multiple schemes and you hurricane a different scheme, you cannot trigger like turn the tide off of that other scheme because it wasn't removed by a thwart. Just like lightning bolt, I do have the same pending question about torrential rain. If I thwart from a scheme and then remove the last threat from that scheme by hurricane, can we play turn the tide after your hero thwarts and removes the last threat from a scheme, deal damage to an enemy? Again, my read for now is yes, but I'm going to update the comments with the actual answer to that question. But just important to keep in mind that these effects that trigger other abilities don't inherit the label of whatever the ability is. They can have different targets, and there's going to be a bunch of different positive or negative effects about that. It's part of the things you want to plan around your turn. Another card that is worth talking about is Flash Freeze. So Flash Freeze is a hero interrupt defense. When the villain attacks you, the villain and each minion engaged with you get -3 attack while attacking you this phase. If Blizzard is in play, resolve its special ability. So, couple things about this. When the villain attacks you trigger condition is right at the beginning of a villain attack. It is the same timing as when the villain initiates an attack, when the villain activates, when the villain initiates an activation. Those are all the same time. And it's a non-forced interrupt. So any forced interrupts to those things will trigger before this is even playable. This trigger condition, this U there remembers who the original activation started against. So even if interrupts to the same window change who the target of the activation is, Flash Freeze is still only playable if you are the character that the villain initiated an attack against. We have a ruling on this card exactly that is how it works. And I think that is why this trigger condition remembers the U, and even though it's possible to play this card when its trigger condition is true after directing it via Powerful Punch or something at that timing, this card knows that you are not the original target and cannot be triggered. Also keep in mind that its effect is a lasting effect that goes till the end or this phase. So it can affect multiple attacks, and if the villain gets additional activations or minions get additional activations, they're still going to have -3 attack while attacking you this phase. That will also apply to further attacks, even initiated against other players that you defend. As long as something is attacking you during the phase in which you played Flash Freeze, that enemy is going to get -3 attack. So pretty sweet ability. Just keep in mind it's kind of play restriction. It can only be played when the villain initiates an attack against Storm. That attack has to have been originally initiated against you. So that's most of the rules things. I have been finding Storm really fun. I hope you guys do too. A lot of the kind of fun of playing her, especially multiplayer, is just balancing around these different weather effects and kind of working with your team to figure out the most effective way to arrange them. So some obvious things is we love having Thunderstorm active during the hero phase, and we like having Blizzard or Hurricane active during the villain phase. So if you can kind of flip between those, that's a pretty solid baseline. But also just communicate with your team, especially communicate if you're going to be in Alter Ego, because that's going to have one weather out for longer than usual. Let your team know if you have Weather Goddess in your hand. Keep in mind that you can use these abilities out of turn, so you can, set up some more specific combos. Keep in mind when Clear Skies is going to be helpful or harmful to you. Don't necessarily jam it all the time just because drawing cards is good. These other effects are good as well. And just, if you guys have been playing Storm and been playing her in multiplayer and have some tips and tricks about what weathers you like having out when or specific tech for some scenarios, totally drop that information in the comments. Let other players know. If you guys have any other questions about Storm or any of the cards we talked about, find me, ask a question. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy hitting enemies, all of your villains and minions with lightning bolts and seeing what happens. Peace.